Hey, it's Pete, owner of the Bookless Pete channel. I figured it was time I did some kind of video. I went to do a weekly wrap up and realized I haven't read any books this week. You might wonder why I had to look to see. It's because I've done a lot of reading this week. I just haven't finished much. I finished one novel that I don't want to talk about because I've got a couple others in this series. I want to talk about them all at once. And I'm in the middle of a couple other things, some short stories and different things. So a lot of reading, nothing I'm ready to talk about. So I thought I'd pull up a subject that I didn't get around to before. Hopefully, this will be short. I will probably call this channel something, this video something like a short history of short histories or something. I read a couple history books later. I'm still struggling to really get into the long list of history books that I want to read. I'm not very far along on Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire yet. I want to read all the Greeks and a couple of the Romans, which I've never done. I mean, I've read Greeks. I'm not a complete Philistine. I've read all the classic Greek tragedians. I would have said all the Greek playwrights, Aeschylus, Euripides, and Sophocles, but I haven't read Aristophanes. I could never really get into it. You'd think I would like it. I like comedies, but and I've read the Iliad and the Odyssey, of course. There's a couple new. There's a couple things I want to try with the Iliad and the Odyssey next time I read them again. But I've read many different translations, but I really haven't got into the Greek historians, the Peloponnesian War kind of stuff, and all that, which I really feel like I need to do. A few months ago, sort of in prep for that, I started reading some shorter history books, and I want to read. Well, I'll talk about that one in a minute. But one I found, which is really a delightful read, I want to recommend to people if you haven't read much history, maybe even if you have, A Little History of the World by E.M. Grom, Gom, Gombrich. Gombrich. I read this a long time ago, back before I got to Ecuador. So that was like 2.5 months ago. I really enjoyed it. It is written for young readers, but it was written in the 30s, uh, or the late 20s, early 30s. So it was written at a higher level than what a publisher would probably want to give to middle grade readers today. Although I'm sure they can definitely anybody can handle it. It's just a certain tone about that. Certain things are sort of glossed over a bit for although he handles some of the greatest tragedies in history pretty well for a kid's book. I mean, he doesn't really sugarcoat things. He doesn't lie. He goes through some very dark times in history, just touches on them. um, Very well written. Has an interesting history. He was a oh, people are coming out. There's very thin walls here. He was a German speaker. He was living in the early part of the 20th century, in after the First World War, but before the Second World War, in Austria. He was a translator of English, and he got offered a contract to translate a children's history book for this publisher. He read it and he goes, "This book is terrible. I don't want to translate this. It's just a piece of crap." And the publisher said, "Well, what do you think? You want to try it yourself?" Or maybe he offered to try it himself. He said, like, "I could write a better history than this. I could do it much better." And the publisher said, "Okay, but you only have 6 weeks," or something like that. So it's a very interesting story he tells in the intro to this about how he pulls down all his resources and he writes an outline, and he writes this book in 6 weeks, an outline of history. There are others. around this time and even earlier and later. One volume kind of history of the world. It's obviously a lot of stuff to cover. It has its biases, of course, just like if you read any sort of British version. I know there was an H.G. Wells outline of history we had when I was a kid. I don't think I ever read the whole thing, but there's going to be biases, and there's going to be very short shrift to the Asian world. You know, it was really only a chapter or two on China, I believe, the Chinese Empire and India, but uh, it's very interesting because it is not so heavily weighted towards Great Britain and the British Isles as it would be because he was a German. So there's a lot of stuff about Central Europe and things like that, especially in the Roman era, the Germanic tribes, the Gallic tribes, and that kind of thing that is really given more attention. Just because this writer happens to be German instead of most of those that are around in English, so that was how it came out. It was a big bestseller in German when it came out. The Nazis then banned it. He and his family, he was Jewish, so he and his family fled Austria before 1933 to England. The German book was banned by the Nazis because they felt it was a bit too anti-war for what they were hoping to expose the masses to at the time. So that was the end of it. After the war, or sometime later after the war, people, remembered the book. German readers, remembered it fondly. He, at some time after the war, when he was living in England, he got the idea to translate it into English and to also update it some. I believe his son helped him with that, so he does cover some other things, but it's mostly the world from prehistory to the early 20th century to the Kaiser, and even not that much on that. Mostly 19th century history, but it's a really fun, delightful read. He has a great breezy voice. Of course, a lot of things, a lot of like I said before, his sources were kind of just like general resources that people had at the time. He wasn't trying to do like a book for the ages. It was encyclopedias and things he just happened to have around. So of course, there's a lot of detail, but I think it's a fun read. It's like 200 pages, maybe less. That if you're new to history, you can find a lot of different periods that you might want to read about. So I want to recommend that to anybody. It's really delightful to read. I'm not giving a good enough uh, description of its character. It's just fun to sit down with for a couple hours, or read a couple chapters a night for something, and I just enjoy his voice. Another series I want to read is the Will and Ariel Durant History of Civilization, and Will Durant's History of Philosophy. Those are long time on my list. I don't know. I probably have to give up everything except I'd have to give up Spanish. I'd have to give up reading anything else. I'd have to give up reading Hard Case Crime. I don't know what I'd have to give up if I'm ever going to read all these great tomes of history that I would like to read, but we'll get through a few of them, I guess. Anyway, I did talk about this before. I won't link to the previous video. It's not that important, but this is The Lessons of History by Will and Ariel Durant, which is their book that they wrote. It's kind of a summing up of what they learned from writing their multi volume, 10,000 page history of civilization. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because when I last talked about this in a video, I forgot the main takeaway from this book. I forgot what their main lesson is, so I'm going to spoil it for you. Very insightful, and I think it maybe would scare people. If you take a long enough view, it might give you some comfort. But what they seem to have derived from studying all of history is that it works like this. So I am spoiling the book, but you should read it anyway. It's like 110 pages or something. And then you can decide if you like their writing style. Power concentrates, and it concentrates at the top. And history is cyclical. Those are the two things to remember. I mean, I think this is maybe kind of a quiet time, relatively, in the last couple of months of world chaos. Um, well, maybe not. I mean, uh, apparently, the AI thought leaders have decided they needed some good publicity. So just today, there's a couple of well-known actresses. One who has a book club, Reese Withers, Reese was it Reese? Who cares? Um, and another one who came out as forming companies to get people to embrace AI, and hey, the change is coming. And it's, as other people pointed out, it's kind of reminding of the same kind of group of people, the same kind of trusted, well-liked celebrities came out a few years ago, and they all started pushing NFTs, non-fungible tokens, that the dumb ape, the cartoon apes, people were buying, kind of related to cryptocurrency, that people were spending tens of thousands of even more money on, and it all disappeared in a couple of years because, but they did around that time get a bunch of celebrity sponsors, and it sounds like the AI companies are doing the same thing again, trying to get some friendly celebrities on the payroll to encourage us all to love AI, which they are just determined to force upon us. They're just going to drive it down our throats, and they're going to win on that. They will win on that stuff, unless it. Our only hope is it's much less powerful than they think it is, which it is, but they're still going to end up giving us slop. They're going to give us a lot more slop that we're just going to have to wade through, which is going to force more people to go to Project Gutenberg, go to the classics, meaning the real classics, the books written a long time ago, where we can cross check them with other versions, and we can find out what's has not been rewritten on the fly for AI. We can look at the old art and compare it to other versions of the old art and make sure they haven't AI enhanced it and all that stuff. But what they learned is history cycles through, and generally income and power quality becomes worse and worse until it isn't. What do I mean by that? So the money, the people with the power take more of the money and more of the money and more of the power. They keep taking it and taking it and taking it. And then eventually it explodes. It goes the other way. And those are very ugly times in history. They can be, the French Revolution, whatever. There are ways, he mentions, they mentioned in here FDR, the FDR administration, and he has this sign there, like apparently someone in the FDR administration, maybe multiple people, knew their history. They knew what was going to happen if they didn't make some reforms. So that's what happens in the world. It's going on now. It goes on all the time. It just gets worse and worse. The Gilded Age. Anytime you can remember, and it doesn't really matter who you blame it on, the corporations, the government. It's all the same in the end. It's the powerful manage to collect more power. It's like the game Monopoly. The better you play Monopoly, the old board game Monopoly, the more power you get, the easier it is to get more as you go along. As you get richer in the game, it's easier to become richer, and it's easier to. And I've always said that the real world is like Monopoly, except that the powerful players get to rewrite the rules. However, that is not the end of the story. Otherwise, civilization would have flatlined hundreds of thousands of years ago, instead of just going like this all the time, up and down. So civilizations rise and fall. The powerful take everything for themselves, not because they're evil. I mean, maybe that's the definition of evil, but they take it because they're good at accumulating stuff. If they weren't, they wouldn't have been at the top in the first place. Uh, Being rich makes it easier to make money. Writing the laws makes it easier to make money. Uh, Closing and opening the Strait of Hormuz based on the stock market every couple of days, and then short selling, uh, uh, or putting place bets on, depending on what your administration is going to do the next day on the world stage. So you make your bets, and then you have your president send out his true social, and then the stock market goes in the direction that they knew it would head because of what they did. So they get more money, and people who panic sell lose, and most people just at this point, I think, know not to pay attention to the up and down of the day. They can stay afloat, but it's a dark time. We know that, and I just want to say, if you take the long view from these books, you see that this is not the worst time in history. It is not the best time in history, but it is a time in history, and things are moving in a certain direction, and they don't move in one direction all the time. It will go back the other way. It's hard to live through for people that are suffering. I'm sorry for that. I wish I knew the answer, but I think Will and Ariel Durant actually accurately diagnose what human history is, what it's always been. It's accumulation of wealth in and power into the hands of fewer and fewer people until that becomes unsustainable, and then it explodes on those people, and we rebuild again. And if somebody's sensible enough to see that, which they are at times, that's how we've been floating along this long with this great wealth inequality, which is higher than the 1890s, according to some metrics. I don't know if they're right or not. Anyway, I didn't plan on this to be all that political, but it's always a cycle. That's history. Is a cycle of civilizations up and down. Okay, that's it. Next time I'll talk about some crime books or something fun like that. I'll talk to you later.